The series of Avatar has been an iconic demonstration of how a show is supposed to be formatted: comedy, fun, and an all-out great story. And I will admit, the scene when Zuko confronted his father, admitting he was going to join the other side, threw me off for a loop, and I'm sure it did many others as well. But many were confused as to why they curved the story like this. It could have been because we were expecting the story to play out how they kept saying it, Zuko eventually capturing Aang in the end. Hey guys, and welcome to Film Study, where we analyze films in various ways to make you see it in a different concept. The adventures and certain scenarios, of course, could have never been predicted by the audience, but from season 1 we know that the end was going to involve Aang defeating the Fire Lord. But I wanted to ask the question, what if Zuko never switched sides? In order to figure this out, we need to analyze the entire series, which moments would have changed, and with those changes, how would it affect the events after the fact? In the first episode, we understand Iroh has a big influence on Zuko, or at least tries to guide him in the right direction, but Zuko is purely and solely focused on capturing Aang. His banishment is what made him focus on capturing him. He had built up anger and hatred, which caused his powers to not be as strong and uncontrolled. Believing he had spotted him, Zuko heads to the Southern Water Tribe and attacks the village, eventually capturing him. We can tell during their first confrontation that Zuko has only rage in him. The scar on his face is a symbol of the story we all know. I mean, their first fight, he has so much rage, he almost kills him right then and there, with Aang practically drowning. Didn't he say you wanted him alive? I mean, Iroh even helps him shoot him out of the sky as they are escaping on Appa. Now, I don't know about you, but this is kind of contradicting what Iroh believes in. With the interrogation of the guards on the ship, Commander Zhao figured out from this that the Avatar was found. Because Zuko is still a teenager at this point, he doesn't trust him with this task of successfully capturing him. All the rage and anger in him is creating chaos and no control. And I will admit, at some point, Iroh just sits in the background, not stepping forward because he just creates too many of these incidents and confrontations. When challenged to an Agni Kai in episode 3 by Commander Zhao, he wins exponentially. That's because Zuko was trained by a master, and even though Zhao also was, but by a very sloppy one at that, and let his power go to his head. Right then and there, he could have taken his life, but subconsciously there was probably a moment in his mind where he knew that he would be going too far. Iroh even steps in and mentions that,
"Even in exile, my nephew is more honorable than you."
That's a hint at Zuko's softer side that we barely get to see at this point. Going forward, when we see the battles between Aang and Zuko are very aggressive, having no exact plan, going just straight forward attacking. At the end of Book 1, Chapter 6, Zuko finds Katara's necklace, in which he uses in order to track him down. Due to Iroh's past of breaching the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, he was captured by the Fire Nation guards. During the winter solstice, Zuko tells Iroh to go a different direction as he knows Commander Zhao is following him. Iroh goes along with the plan, but it's obvious he's not supportive of this decision. Up to this point, we've learned that Iroh may not be supportive of Zuko's decision-making, but he understands his reasoning, to get his family back together, for his father to want to be near him again. During the second part of the winter solstice, when Aang speaks with Roku for the first time, we learn that the comet was used as a key to power to accomplish what they wanted, a worldwide nation of control. Despite having died years before, the first men to have started the war, Sozin, his actions caused almost all of the events of the series. Zuko's father Ozai followed the actions of the war that was going and continued it because of his personality, power, and control. During one of the meetings that involved a laid-out plan to ambush one of the Earth cities, Zuko spoke up, defending the guards they were going to use as bait, knowing that they wouldn't survive. By speaking out of turn, this showed disrespect to the nation as a whole, and came the Agni Kai. The refusal to fight was the reason for his banishment.
You will fight for your honor.
I meant you no disrespect.
As punishment, he was banished and sent to capture the Avatar.
So in order for him to have never switched sides, there are two other ways the story would have gone. Zuko just giving up looking, or somehow Ozai undid his banishment on Zuko and forgave him. It's just like when Aang was faced with the difficult decision on how exactly to defeat the Fire Lord in the last season. So for the first scenario, Zuko giving up, the story itself wouldn't exist. The series surrounds Aang's journey to master the elements with the rest of the time that he has in defeating the Fire Lord, and follows Zuko's story in achieving his goal of gaining back his honor. In the episode The Blue Spirit, we get a closer look at Zuko's morality, following him along as he rescues Aang from Zhao. We see another moment of Zuko actually being nice. In the episode of The Deserter, we found out the core of firebending as a whole: no self-control, power, and anger. That is what we are introduced to as to how firebending is. With all the elements, there is a certain aspect as to how the elements are taught and introduced to students. Zhang, the person who introduced it to Aang, taught him about how violent firebending could be if not taught correctly. We obviously see this from Zhao just a few moments later, when he gives a clear example of no self-control and destroys his own ships. Zhao tries to capture Aang as well out of spite of Zuko and his own selflessness. He has no real reason to capture him, when Zuko does. Because of Zhao's power over Zuko, he uses it to take advantage of him. For example, completely taking over his ship, attempting to kill him, and when he even tries to come back for revenge, and the spirits come after him, he still tried to help, thus resulting in his death.
My throne, my country. I'm about to lose them all. I lost it all. I want it back. I want the Avatar. I want my honor, my throne.
There is a simple honor in poverty.
There's no honor for me without the Avatar.
Moving to season 2, we are introduced to Azula, Zuko's sister, and now she is the one to have replaced Zhao in terms of power and control. Zuko and Iroh become traitors to the Fire Lord and remain discreet to everyone they come in contact with, including a woman who shares her story about her encounter with the Fire Nation at one point.
My daughter tells me you're refugees. We were once refugees ourselves.
When I was a little girl, the Fire Nation raided our farming village. All the men were taken away. That was the last time I saw my father.
I haven't seen my father in many years.
Oh, is he fighting in the war?
Yeah.
After a bit of time traveling together and Zuko returning as the Blue Spirit in order to find food for him and Iroh, he reveals he wants to split up to find his own way. This gives Zuko time to reflect. After Iroh gets struck by Azula, Zuko has a change in focus, going from chasing the Avatar to wanting to learn how to face Azula. After Zuko and Iroh begin a new life in Ba Sing Se, they both focus on their individual lives, leaving Aang alone. When Zuko finds Appa, who was captured at Ba Sing Se, Iroh confronts him and asks the question,
It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
With this, he decides to set him free. These events would have stayed the same, however the events following would have changed, starting at the end of season 2, the Crossroads of Destiny. Zuko is persuaded by Azula at the last moment when he was doing so well with his decisions and where he was, but wanting to be wanted by his father again was all he was focused on from the very start.
At the end of this day, you will have your honor back. You will have Father's love. You will have everything you want.
Zuko goes against Iroh, which results in him being imprisoned. Once Azula struck Aang, he ended up killing him, making the rest of the Fire Nation believe that they had already won the war at that point. Of course, we know this is far from the truth. Zuko knows Katara healed him. He secretly spoke with another man and instructed him to go after him once again. Based on Zuko's personality, he would have found a way to stop the war entirely. How? Well, what if Iroh was able to? Remember, he was next in line to be throned, and in fact, he was. Then he stepped down when his son died in a battle he put him in. He was tired of all the violence and rage from the Fire Nation he was surrounded by. Ozai persuaded his father, Azulon, to step in to take place as Fire Lord instead of Iroh. He used Iroh's son's death to revoke his birthright.
Revoke Iroh's birthright. I am your humble servant, here to serve you and our nation. Use me.
You dare suggest I betray Iroh?
What I've noticed about Zuko is his key trigger, or the inability of respect coming from people. However, most of the time, because he's distracted by his own rage, his trigger is the lack of respect he sees from people's behavior, but he's blinded by his own. When ordered by Azulon to kill Zuko so that he would know the pain of losing a son, Ozai admitted to Zuko that he would have gladly carried out the murder had Ursa not interfered. Eventually, he murdered his own father in order to use his brother's birthright and become Fire Lord. Zuko has always wanted his destiny, worthiness, and his father to praise him, but there are multiple ways to do this. During the day of the invasion, the plan they sought out during a solar eclipse, Zuko sits down and writes a letter. Now this reminds me of another incident with Aang, another way the story could have gone with him running away. If this were to occur, his conversation with him wouldn't have occurred, as the reasoning is not only to reveal the survival of the Avatar, but his plan to switch sides.
And Bossing say it was Azula who took down the Avatar, not me.
Why would she lie to me about that?
Because the Avatar's not dead. He survived.
And he said himself,
Because I know my own destiny. Taking you down is the Avatar's destiny.
if he had left out the part where he was joining Aang, his next plan was to break out Iroh from prison. This would have stayed the same, however they would have stayed together. So with that, the rest of the series would have continued with Zuko going his separate ways with everyone else, alongside Iroh, as Zuko always thought of him as a father figure anyway. In the end, Zuko tries to persuade Iroh to overthrow him. Zuko wants the war to end, but Aang has conflicted feelings about how to end it. Iroh would be able to overthrow, but he chooses not to. But what do you guys think of this theory? How else do you think the rest of the story would have gone if Zuko never joined Aang in defeating his father? And how do you think it could have changed the events of the Legend of Korra series? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below.